Hey, we're live!
Live.
Totally
Live is
live.
good. Live is good.
But no one cares. I
All
gotta
right.
reopen my soundboard. Hold on. All right, here we go. All right, here comes the intro music. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin podcast, your source for IT news, commentary, and a healthy dose of paranoia. I don't know. How paranoid are we? It's in the intro music.
We can be pretty paranoid.
Yeah, I guess so. It's sort of part of the job, huh?
Yep, it is.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 15. Maybe you've heard about ransomware this past week, or the week before. Yeah, you guessed it. We're going to be talking about ransomware tonight.
Everybody else is. We might as well too. We don't want to be left out in
Yeah.
the cold.
Yeah, right. See, everyone's talking about it from a security and analysis and, protection level. We're going to talk about it from, boots on the ground. How the heck do sysadmins protect their stuff, right?
That's the plan.
That's the plan.
So,
All right.
episode 15. This presents a problem.
Problem in our analogies to the Dresden Files?
Yeah, it's the last book that's been released so far.
That is a problem. So sorry, guys. The podcast is over until Jim Butcher releases the next book. So
okay, if that makes Jim Butcher release the next book faster, I'm all for it.
Absolutely. So if you guys want to hear some more Iron Sysadmin, you need to find Jim Butcher on Twitter. I believe he's what's his handle? God, I knew this a second ago.
Something or other, long shot author or something.
Long shot author.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yep, long shot author. Go look him up and lobby him for the next book, because we're not going to record anymore because we need episode to book parity.
Yes. So he needs to start writing books quicker.
Yep. So sorry, guys. It might be what I think next year. He says the next book's going to be out, so we'll be back in 2018.
Well, he could be working on the book. He hasn't tweeted since May 11th. Here's hoping.
Here's hoping. Last I read, he is in fact working on the book, but I'm pretty sure no one's tuned in to hear us talk about how we're longing for the next book.
No.
The Dresden Files. So however, on our next episode, we're not going to have anything to compare the number to, so we're going to have to
find something new.
Switch to hex or something.
So before we get started with this, in the current news happening right now, it looks like there was some sort of a terrorist attack in England at a concert, and from the reports I'm seeing, lots of little kids involved.
Yep. So
our hearts go out to the families, and
we try very hard to avoid the political aspect of anything, but a terror attack is a terror attack, and it's a big, big shame, especially when innocent people and especially children are involved in these sort of attacks. It's a scary world we're living in.
So, yeah, I'm not sure what to say. Our hearts go out to everybody that's involved.
Absolutely.
All right. So, we want to talk some news.
On to the IT news. So, maybe you heard about this thing, kind of big news past 2 weeks or so. I think it hit the end of the week we recorded episode 14. So this would be almost a week and a half ago, I guess, at this point. But WannaCry. Everybody wants to cry.
It hit over the weekend, too, which is even more fun.
Indeed. I guess it hit on Friday, but then it really propagated over the weekend, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like there have been a lot of security researchers, a lot of security podcasts, a lot of other IT podcasts that have just beat this horse to death. So I don't want to go into too many details about WannaCry itself. If you're under a rock somewhere and don't know what WannaCry is, you probably want to go look it up. You're probably not working in this industry, though.
Or listening to this podcast. It was pretty much everywhere. The the out of control worm that was doing intense damage that was stopped by a $10 domain name.
So, yeah, it's kind of odd. Kind of odd the way they set that up.
Yeah.
I've heard lots of speculation as to why, but there's apparently a kill switch in WannaCry that all you had to do was register a domain. If the software was able to resolve the DNS name for a certain domain, it just stopped, which was weird. So if you
don't know what ransomware is, long story short, little program gets onto your computer, encrypts all your files with a secret key and a password, and then pops up a nice message that says, "Hey, I heard you like your files.
Yeah, you want them back? We got them. They're safe and sound.
Yep. Send some Bitcoin over to this address, and we'll be happy to give you your files back."
Yeah, that is assuming that they are actually safe and sound, and it's not just a scam, which has happened. Unfortunately,
it has happened. Yeah, my understanding, and this is not scientific at all. My understanding is that thus far, the majority of these sorts of attacks have resulted in people who paid getting their files back. So, but there are better ways to handle this. And
yes, so
we'll talk about that later.
What it comes down to is, in order for the ransomware model to work, the thieves have to be honest enough to actually cough up your files when you pay. Otherwise, they're just going to lose credibility, and no one's going to pay the ransom anymore.
Yeah, Lurg and Malicious Link over on Defensive Security Podcast have talked quite a bit about this. Waxed poetic, you might say.
Yes, indeed.
So
on the WannaCry note, you may notice in the show notes that we didn't bother linking any news article for WannaCry because, I mean, it's just everywhere. If I were to go, I could probably give you 20 links to news articles about what WannaCry is, who registered the domain, why his life sucks now because everyone's hounding him for information he may or may not even have or care to give anybody.
Right.
Anyway, just, whatever. What I did link in the first news article, however, was there is a decryption tool already for WannaCry. So, yeah, all is not lost. If your machine has been encrypted by WannaCry, there is hope. However, there are some caveats according to the article. Some say that if you've rebooted your machine after you've been infected, you may actually not be able to use the decryption tool.
Right.
Which sounds a little weird, but whatever. I'm sure there's some reason for that I don't fully grasp.
So, the original item in here that they have as a decryption tool is called WannaKey. That only works on Windows XP, and it regenerates the encryption keys from memory. So yeah, if you reboot, whoops, you're done. There is a second tool in here that was released more recently called WannaKiwi, which works on XP 7, Vista, and then Server 2003 and 2008.
Yay.
And I believe that has the same... Pretty sure that has the same problem. If you reboot, you're pretty much done.
Yeah, so it says here, it does so by searching for them in the wcry.exe process. Process generates the RSA private key. Yeah, I guess them would be the keys.
Right.
Yeah, so this is the process that generates the RSA private key. The main issue is that the crypt destroy key and crypt released context does not erase the prime numbers from memory before freeing the associated memory. So that would explain why the reboot clears it.
Right. So there's a bug in the ransomware.
Surprise. Apparently WannaCry is just fraught with software bugs.
So yeah, it ran pretty rampant. I heard a lot of hospitals got taken out. I fortunately don't have to deal with Windows machines at the moment, so we didn't see it at all. And I think you said that you didn't see anything at all where you work either.
Yeah, so we've got I don't manage the desktops, but the group that does, I believe, said we have several hundred managed desktops, and probably in the order of maybe 1,000 or 2,000 desktops that are on campus, and that we're aware of. None of them were hit. Nothing on campus has been hit by WannaCry. So I don't know if we're just lucky or if we did something right over the years, and the network is sufficiently locked down to protect us against such things. So the propagation of the WannaCry worm did require access to SMB version 1 over the network. So propagation would have been limited simply by segregating your networks and not having SMB version 1 turned on. And face it, most of the kids that come to college probably don't have older machines that are running a version of Windows that supports SMB version 1. So that may have been just enough to protect most of our workstations.
And having previously worked there as well, and been responsible for the network, I can tell you that SOM is not available outside of the network. So it wasn't
absolutely
from the internet.
Yeah, right. And well, yeah. So
right. So the main exploit here is the double pulsar NSA exploit that was released with all of the shadow broker stuff a couple weeks ago. Which has been patched for a while, or the patch has been available for a while. Clearly not everybody's patching, but that double pulsar relies on SMB being open.
Yeah, somebody said 60 days or so. I think it was 61 days the day that WannaCry hit. That's how long it had been since Microsoft had released the patch. So right. They had plenty of time. People had plenty of time to patch. Now, admittedly, the machines at the college were not patched. The servers were. The workstations weren't, mainly because of convenience. I mean, you know how that goes.
Yeah. So the exploit itself was patched a month before it was released in the Shadow Brokers dump. So
okay. So I don't know where that 61 days came from. I saw that on Twitter.
No, that's 61 days for WannaCry. So it's about a month after Shadow Brokers that WannaCry came out, roughly.
Oh, okay.
Timeline wise.
Okay. Now, someone had actually correlated when the patch had come out to when WannaCry came out.
Right.
That it had been 61 days, but
yeah, so it's actually a really short period of time. I mean, what's the MS 0867? Was that the crazy Windows XP bug that everybody was popping for years and years and years?
You mean the one that they bake a cake for at DerbyCon?
Yeah. That's the one. I don't remember what exactly the exploit is, but so there's a Windows exploit. I believe the number was MS 0867, and it was fairly popular for the ease of using it to gain a foothold on machines. I believe it was a Windows XP bug.
MS 08067.
Yep, and it is still being used today to crack into Windows XP boxes. So the patch has been available for like 10 years or some insane number.
October 23rd, 2008, according to the Microsoft Security Bulletin that I just found.
All right. Little over 7 years then.
Yeah.
So, but anyway.
Well, it's 2017, Jason. Maybe you've lost track of time.
A little bit.
So it's been almost 10 years.
Yeah. So
like it's like
9 years.
8.5 years at this point.
Eight. Math is hard. Look, do you see
math is hard.
That's a lot of whiskey.
You and your old fashioned.
Yep.
Oh, this is crafted RPC. So this is the RPC exploit that had been running around for so long.
Yep. So, all right. So,
hey guys, we're not pen testers. We just patch the systems. We don't try to break them. So,
blue team versus red. So
exactly.
Now that WannaCry has been stopped.
Yep.
The natural progression is WannaCry some more. So there's a new ransomware floating around.
Even the media hasn't called this WannaCry some more.
I'm coining it right now.
All right, trendsetters. That's what we are here at Iron Sysadmin.
Are they really calling this thing Eternal Rocks?
Yeah, not the best. The best name
Okay.
there.
Okay. Well, all right. So, the WannaCry worm used 2 of the NSA hacking tools that were released. Eternal Rocks uses 7.
Yes, 7, because you need to cover all your bases. It's more like a spray and pray sort of approach to malware.
And doesn't do a whole lot yet. It just kind of
Yeah.
infects you and then just sits there. So
So WannaCry apparently utilized Eternal Blue, which is an SMB version 1 exploit tool, and Double Pulsar, which is a backdoor Trojan. Okay, so on top of that, Eternal Rocks also uses Eternal Romance, which sounds dirty, Eternal Champion, Eternal Synergy. I don't know where these names came from.
the NSA, they name all this stuff.
SMB Touch and Arch Touch. So Eternal Romance is another SMB version 1 exploit. Eternal Champion is an SMB version 2 exploit. Eternal Synergy is an SMB version 3 exploit. So, cover all the bases there. SMB Touch is an SMB reconnaissance tool, as is Arch Touch. So I guess if you have a reconnaissance tool at the NSA, Touch is in the name. And Pulsar is in there if it's a Trojan. I don't know.
Right. So the long and short is, if your SMB is open, this thing attacks it. It seeks out and destroys SMB. So why is your SMB open to the internet again?
Listen, save that for the main topic.
Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah. So
yeah,
this is nasty stuff, and apparently it just sort of infects your system and waits. So we don't know what it's intended to do, but there it is. It's hanging out, waiting to do something.
So they know what the command and control is. It's using Tor network for it, which I believe makes it more difficult to take it down.
Surprise.
But it's out there and it's infecting. So
is that the dark web?
I mean, there's 50 shades of dark web. So.
Oh, right. Is there like the kind of dark web? And is there like the dusk web?
Whatever it is, it makes you cry. So, yep. You should patch your systems, because I believe all of these all of the NSA exploits that were released by shadow brokers have patches. So if you're
all
not
of
patching,
them have been? Okay.
I do believe so. Yes.
Well, good. That's good to know.
Well, check me. But I believe all of them.
Yeah, right.
So you should probably.
If my own confusion as to whether these are patched or not hasn't tipped you off, we may not be an authoritative source for whether all of them have been patched, but I know several of them have.
Right.
So
yeah, I'm pretty sure I've heard more than once that they've all been patched. But regardless, double check after you install your patches, and you should be somewhat safe. And then listen to the rest of the podcast, and we'll talk about some more ways to be safe.
We're totally going to solve all the problems later on in the podcast. All of them.
Mileage may vary. Don't want to promise that. I mean, lawsuits.
Listen, do we really need a disclaimer on Iron Sysadmin podcast? I know some podcasts do that.
Maybe. All right, moving on to something completely different.
Yes, let's move on to something more hacky and cool.
Right. So you throw this in there. Go ahead and tee this one up.
Yeah, so I'm going to be the first to admit that I am not a network guy, but this sounded like it was right up Jason's alley because I know how much he loves Wi-Fi. Right?
Sometimes.
So, according to, what is this, Hewlett-Packard, isn't it? Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. This article is about how you can build your own LTE network over Wi-Fi frequencies, which is kind of cool, but it's also kind of not quite there yet. Right there in the title.
It's also a tad misleading, because yes, you can build your own LTE network over Wi-Fi frequencies, not over Wi-Fi. So basically, what they're saying is that you can use the I guess initially they're targeting the 5 gigahertz band in their initial 1.0 release of this, which I guess they created the specification and they're just kind of waiting to see what happens. But the idea is that they use the 5 gigahertz frequencies to broadcast LTE throughout buildings and whatnot, so that it's easier to get a signal, because the normal frequencies don't always penetrate through buildings. Neat stuff.
Indeed.
If you read through the whole article, you find out later on that it requires special chips and support and software, and this isn't just a add it to your device and off you go. You specifically need hardware for this. So it would be a little bit of a change in how the phone companies work, only because they're typically very, very, very tight about anyone who broadcasts the frequencies that they use for the phones. So, I mean, we went through this at the when I worked at the college. If you want to do repeaters inside the buildings, I believe it's called a DAC system. The phone company comes in and inspects your wiring and runs tests, frequency tests and whatnot, to verify whether or not you're allowed to turn it on. So
wow.
You may have gone and spent $100,000 to wire your building, but if AT&T comes in and Verizon comes in and AT&T gives you a thumbs up and Verizon doesn't, you can't turn it on. So this would be, I think this would be a little bit different because it's in the Wi-Fi range, which means it's more open, and they can't really tell you no. But of course, the handsets have to support it, and then there has to be a way for it to get back to the phone company, which doesn't really. I didn't really see anything in here that explains how that would work.
Sure, sounds like this is all pretty new stuff.
Right. I mean, the other problem that I have is, okay, so now you have an LTE network using your 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi frequency. What's your Wi-Fi running on? So
yeah, I was sort of confused as to what exactly you would use this for, even if you got it running.
Right.
Like for data transfers, but then what?
I don't know. I'm not entirely certain. So it's neat. It sounds like could be a cool addition, especially if they can work it in tandem with Wi-Fi.
This could easily be a case of this is a good first step.
Right.
You know, like, hey, we figured this thing out. Now this leads to this other thing and that other thing, and before you know, we've got 5G inside of our house.
Right. Yep. So they're calling it a private LTE network that you don't have to. That's not subject to government regulation. So
interesting. So can you get the range that like carriers get with this LTE, or is this like yeah, I've got it covering my living room?
Right. It would cover. So it would cover pretty much what your Wi-Fi in your house would cover. So you get a decent amount of coverage at 2.4. You get less coverage with 5.
Right.
So if and they go in here and they say they're not targeting houses, they're targeting industry. So they're targeting, where does it say? Factory machinery. So let's see. Factory floors and underground mines, apparently. And they're looking at using this for equipment that needs to be able to communicate with low latency and a stronger signal than Wi-Fi. So they're saying LTE is better suited for that, and they want to use that instead of using Wi-Fi signals. So it may not necessarily be for cell phones per se, at least not initially. So in those cases, maybe you don't need Wi-Fi in the building. I don't know. But it seems like if it's going to step all over the Wi-Fi networks, that's going to cause a problem.
Yeah, that could be a problem. All right, moving on to our last article for the night, unless you have more to talk about LTE.
Nope.
Good then. everybody's favorite social network, the Face.
The Facebook, except they dropped the.
Yeah, right.
So we're all aware of Facebook, and Facebook has these wonderful, crazy algorithms that do all sorts of stuff with the data that you give them for free. You know, you give them data, right? And they use it.
What? No. How can that be?
Yeah. Yep. So apparently, they they offered advertisers the opportunity to target 6.4 million users, some as young as 14 years old. Apparently, that had just used words such as worthless, insecure, stressed, defeated, etc. So this whole article is about offering advertisers a link, if you will, to psychologically vulnerable teens. Now they go a little bit further and call it, maybe this is weaponized, and they kind of really go to the deep end of it. But
yeah, I still think that's a stretch. I mean, I get where it's going, but
yeah. I mean, look, we know that in a lot of cases, and I don't know about Facebook specifically, but in a lot of cases, advertising is automated. So if I want to put a new advertisement up, I can do so, and it goes through a bunch of filters and whatnot to make sure that it's okay. But those filters look for certain things, and as we've seen with, I don't know, spam filters and pretty much every other filter in existence, you can get through them even with the stuff that you want to target. So if they can get around the filters and they know that they can target specific audiences like this, you could theoretically cause some damage. So say a very malicious person decides to, I don't know, trigger a bunch of vulnerable people. I mean, you could be talking about like mass suicides and whatnot.
Yeah, feed the right.
It seems far-fetched, but I mean, it's possible. Do we really want to offer this sort of information? Like, hell, do these kids want that information out there?
All that aside, I think the very idea that Facebook is able to identify, vulnerable teens, and that's a marketing group that they're willing to publicize, or not publicize, but willing to, hand out to advertisers. I think that in itself is just downright evil.
There is a podcast, I think it's the Note to Self podcast. In one of the episodes, they talked specifically about the targeting that Facebook does. It was either Note to Self or On the Media. I forget which. I'm pretty sure it was Note to Self. But very specifically about, and some of this has to do with the political arena, and some of this has to do with minorities and whatnot. But using Facebook and using the demographics that they have and the all of the information that they have to craft certain messages to certain types of demographics in a very targeted, specific way, which apparently is being used by some. So how did this work? I think if I remember correctly, the story was about real estate companies targeting specific types of people. So for instance, targeting white males within a certain range with a certain type of house and ignoring the rest of the world, or targeting certain minorities with different types of housing and whatnot.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know, dislike that all you want, call it
apparently that's not legal.
Or it's not legal.
So there's some, and I don't know what the nuances are, but there's something to do with fair housing or something like that it's not legal to target like that.
Well, so I mean, it's not like they're saying that minorities can't buy the mansion on the hill, right? They're just targeting them with something they feel is more apt to their lifestyle. This is thin ice I'm trying to tread out onto. My point is that
it's cracking.
Yeah. So I guess my point here is that that's not quite as shaky ground as these vulnerable teens that could easily be swayed into doing nasty things, right?
Exactly.
Like,
I mean,
that seems a lot more dirty than just helping a real estate agent try to target, a certain type of person with a certain type of house, whether that's, a legally gray area or not.
agreed. It's just an example that it is something that does happen and that they do. That's all.
Yeah.
I would hope they're not giving out this sort of data. I mean, even if it's not teens, even if it's psychologically vulnerable adults or elder or whatever, that sort of it's a creepy line.
Yeah. I mean, it's I've known for a long time that Facebook account that I have, it definitely gives the Facebook corporation a lot of insight into who I am and what I like and what I do. But I don't know. I guess I've just always sort of maintained this hope that they weren't using that for nasty things. Like advertising, okay, I get it. They're making money off of me. But they're also giving me a service that's not that I'm not physically paying for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they need to make money somehow. Like I get it.
Right.
I get it. I've run websites for years that make me nothing, right? And it'd be great if I could find a way to say, okay, my user base can now pay me without paying me.
Right.
Right. So I understand that. And it's as creepy as you want to make it, it's it's a business. That's what it comes down to, right? But targeting people based on their emotional state, I don't know, that seems to be, to me, that's crossing a line.
Right. And it's there are other cases that Facebook has done similar things, and so yeah, it is kind of creepy. So anyway, I mean, the long and short of it is very simple. Everybody should close their Facebook account and no longer use it.
Yeah, I mean that really is the thing. If everybody doesn't like the idea that they're doing this sort of thing, close your Facebook account. Go ahead, I'll wait.
I mean, I don't have a Facebook account.
I know you don't.
I opened one briefly for a short period of time, specifically
Mhm.
to talk to a friend, and it was invasive enough in the 2 weeks that I had it that I killed it, and I haven't been on since. So
Yeah.
you can live without a Facebook account. Now,
Mhm.
I don't get invited to parties. I never know what the family is doing. My life is a shambles, but you can live without one.
Yep. There was recently, I forget which network it was on, but one of the podcasts that my Google Home plays for me in the morning when I have it play me the news. There was a segment on how to get rid of your Facebook account, like
Boy,
not just how to.
You're all about things tracking you, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I gotta have something listening to me, right? Anyway, but it covered this similar points to what you just made. Yeah, you'll lose track with a couple of things, but do those things really matter? And that's the question.
Look, if it's important enough that they want me there, I figure there's a myriad of different ways to contact me.
That was the point that the podcast was making. It was, or yeah, I mean, it was a brief segment, I suppose you'd call it. But the point they were trying to make was, if somebody really needs you, if someone really wants to talk to you, if someone really wants to tell you that they just had a baby or whatever, they'll call you or they'll text you or they'll reach you some other way, right? This way you're taking those 2,000 friends you had on Facebook and limiting it down to the people that really actually matter. People that will go out of their way to tell you about something instead of just posting it on Facebook and hoping you see it.
Right. Right. And I mean, the other side is that I don't see the stuff that's on Facebook, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, right. I mean, my usage of Facebook has waned over the years. Especially with the most recent, political, dumpster fire that we've been through. My use of social media in general has just dropped off. I use Twitter a little more than I used to. I've been on Twitter for quite a while. In fact, I think I've been on Twitter longer than I've been on Facebook at this point. But yeah, I don't know. Facebook and Twitter to some extent have just become this cesspool of arguments and politics, and It's just not. It's not great.
All right, that's about as much Facebook as I can handle.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Let me go check my news feed. Hold on. Oh, right.
Yeah, I'm on the Twitters.
Yeah, right. The Twitters. I got a lot of Jeep friends on Facebook. I don't want to lose them. I can't call all those people. What the hell? All right, so that about covers the news.
Glug, glug, glug.
Must drink more. Listen, how am I ever going to get through a second beer if I don't finish the first one?
You know what? I'm still trying to make my way through this old fashioned, which is very good.
There's no way I'm drinking a second one of these things tonight. I will not be able to wake up for work tomorrow.
I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get out of this chair when we're done. Oh, I gotta make.
So you're drinking an old fashioned, right? Is that what you told me? Cool.
Yeah. So my lovely wife got me some whiskey and this old fashioned mix, which makes a quick old fashioned. It's cheating. I understand that.
Cheater.
Stop the hate mail. Stop the hate mail. I do know how to make an old fashioned myself.
This just makes it a lot easier. Huh?
My wife got it for me. I have to use it, right? I mean,
exactly.
On,
you've got to.
You know how this works.
It's the rules.
And the mix is 4-1. 4 parts whiskey, 1 part mix. And I'm gonna have to modify the strength of this a little because it's like drinking straight whiskey, which is, I mean, a lot of people like that, and that's great. I mean, but damn,
4 parts whiskey sounds like quite a bit of whiskey.
Yeah, but 4 shots of whiskey is what it specifically says, and 1 shot of. So yeah, it's yeah, it's a bit, but it's good and I enjoy it. So
I'm trying to find out what the ABV is on this this beer you gave me earlier. I could have sworn Untapped. 13.5. So right. I'm drinking a Finally Legal. Those of you that bothered to tune in to the YouTube feed, which there appears to be none of you, I feel very rejected. You can see the bottle. Anyway, Finally Legal by Weyerbacher, 13.5%. It's a pretty strong stout.
Is a bourbon barrel, a aged bourbon barrel stout.
Yeah, I don't think it says it on the bottle. It said it on the little box that they were in. Little carrier.
It's really good. I've had a couple of them. It's very good.
It is good. I'm usually not a fan of beers that are this high in ABV because they taste a little too much like hard liquor. But this one's not bad. I mean, in a stout, I think stouts are
tastes like bourbon. Oh, right, that's hard liquor.
Stouts are like bitter enough that the high alcohol content really sort of, I don't know, it just works a little better. But yeah, pretty strong. I have a second one right here that's not opened. So yet. Yeah. So if anybody wants to tune in and dare me to drink a second one, go right ahead.
Yeah, it's I was wandering through looking for new beers and saw that Weyerbacher had this new one. It looked interesting. It said bourbon barrel stout, and I said,
yeah,
I like those.
I want to say it said bourbon barrel and vanilla and cocoa.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So yeah, I mean it's not bad. It's definitely strong though. It's sort of a 1 beer night, I think.
And then I was wandering through one of the local places. It was a grocery store the other day, and they had a beer section, and I had to stop in and check it out. And I picked up the collection of Mortal Kombat X beers.
Mortal Kombat X beers.
The labels look cool. There's a stout. There's a stout, an Imperial IPA. I think it's an Imperial Stout, an Imperial IPA, and an Imperial Saison. Never had an Imperial Saison before, but the labels look neat. So I figured, what the hell? I'll give them a shot.
Well, I'll say that after this much of one bottle of the Finally Legal, I'm having trouble typing in the show notes. So, yeah.
Fortunately, I ate just before I poured my old fashioned, so I'm not quite as whacked out as I was the other night when I was drinking these.
Oh yeah, yeah.
When we were working on our super secret project.
Yeah, I don't know how super secret it
To
has
be
to be.
announced.
To be announced. So I guess we can talk a little bit about the little project since we're in our little chat session at this point. So I talked on an earlier podcast. I don't remember which episode it was about the project that I've been taking to DerbyCon each year, the Hack My Derby project, which is a CTF in a hat, which has been a lot of fun to work on. This year we're trying something new, and it's going to involve all of the other, well, at least all the other con goers that decide to participate. We're going to basically release plans for what we're calling contestant derbies that will sort of interact with each other, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I don't know how much I want to give out just yet because we're still figuring out how it's going to work. And to be honest, I don't want to give away too much until we've got things a little more nailed down. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope to share a little more about it in the coming weeks on this on Iron Sysadmin. So yeah, stay tuned.
So we're not talking about the robots and the lasers?
Robots and lasers. No, that'll be for DerbyCon 8.
Oh.
Robots and lasers.
Okay.
Shh. Don't talk about those yet.
All right. Before we move on, you have to apologize.
I have to apologize?
There is, in fact, someone in the chat room.
There's someone in the chat room, and I've missed it.
Yes. Yes. DataFX is in the chat room.
Hi, DataFX. I'm very sorry that I didn't notice you in the chat room, but I have way too many tabs open.
And you've imbibed quite a bit of alcohol.
Yes.
So we'll just blame it on that. All right. What else can we chat about? Here's a loaded question. How was your week?
How was my week? My week has been crazy. Freaking crazy. Not just this week, but this week combined with the end of last week.
Really? Do tell.
Yeah, so it sounds like you had a similar story. So apparently both of us have had incidents with one of our cars being hit in traffic and the other car seizing their brakes up.
Yes.
Somehow both of us have had the same two things happen.
Yep. So I currently have no vehicles. I'm running on a rental car. Which
yeah,
sucks.
So I guess the difference is that I was able to get the vehicle with the seized brakes home, and then I just tore it to pieces and put it back together again with working brakes. Where you had your vehicle towed to a mechanic who then had his wife go to the hospital, which is terrible and all, but leaves you with no car.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, he did spend 2 days with it, at which point he called me and said, "Dude, I've never seen anything like this. I can't get the brake off."
Yeah, that's
pretty
bad.
Oh, good.
That's pretty bad.
How do we fix that?
So yeah, I mean, without going into too crazy detail, my vehicle was rear-ended in traffic last Thursday. The vehicle I drive to work every day. So I took the rock crawler, my other Jeep. I figured, hey, what the heck? I've got this other vehicle that I can drive. And I got about halfway to work, and one of the front brake calipers just seized up on me. My front tire was literally smoking when I pulled over. I pulled over and I cut the wheel all the way to one side so I could get a good look at what's going on. And I get my head under there, and I literally hear popping as though I'm at a campfire. That's how hot it is in there.
Wow.
It was freaking crazy. I was waiting for my Jeep to catch fire.
So on my side, my wife got T-boned in our van. Everybody's okay. And then my car, which I was using to pick them up because they were in an accident, on the way home decided to the rear drum brake decided to start smoking and making weird noises, and so I thought that was bad and I should stop driving. So they took it to the mechanic, and the mechanic has what did he say? He thinks the wheel bearing may have welded itself to the drum brake, and they can't get it off.
That's would have had to get pretty darn hot to make that happen.
Well, it was smoking, and I didn't want to touch it, so it's
Yeah, well,
possible.
I wouldn't have touched it either.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
mean, what are the chances that both of us would have similar events befall us? Unrelated, but similar events. One vehicle hit the other vehicle with similar brake problems. It's
right.
just weird stuff going on there, man. So I think one of us or both of us should start playing the lottery so that when the other one wins, the other one will, eventually also win. Is that how it's going to work?
No, you know what? I don't care what happens. I'm still not playing the lottery. Waste of money.
It really is. It really is.
I'm just going to keep blaming aliens.
Aliens. Yep, totally aliens. There's some alien orchestrating all of our lives, and they're running out of plot.
Plot. Honey, we're running out of plot. Can you run out of the store and get us a new roll?
Well, no, it's like that TV series. It's going on for like 9 or 10 seasons, and they can't think of any new ideas, so they just keep repeating the old ones. Well, apparently this particular month is all about, vehicles getting hit and brakes getting seized up.
Maybe.
They're running out of ideas.
All right.
So one last thing before we get on to the main topic. You may or may not notice that Jason doesn't sound quite so digitized as he used to. Why is that, Jason?
I have a new microphone.
He actually finally got himself a microphone, and it's awesome. He actually has the same mic that I do, just because, whatever, that was the easy way out.
You sent me the link.
I did.
I just clicked the buy button. Jeez.
Because you asked. So
hey, no more complaining about my voice.
I have to say that I have noticed a marked improvement in the voice quality. I don't know if listeners have yet, or even if you do, because you're still using your Bluetooth headphones, so everything probably sounds just as digitized as it used to.
I don't hear myself, so...
Oh, that's right. You don't have...
No idea. I don't have a mixer.
You don't have it reporting back. Well...
Nope.
Yeah, I guess without a...
All I know is that I have the same microphone as you, and now, if listeners complain that I don't sound good...
It's my fault.
It's your fault.
I get it. Well, here, I can just turn your channel down, and then I can talk all kinds of bad about you.
I figured you were doing that anyway.
Only sometimes.
All right. Do we have any announcements? Oh, no. We have to announce that Nate has emptied his beer glass.
My beer mug is empty, and I really think it'd be a bad idea to drink the other one. I do have this one here that still has the cap on it. This is my spare.
It's in the wrong configuration. The cap should be removed. The liquid should be poured into that.
It is. Listen,
mug.
if I drink the other beer, I don't know if I'm going to finish the podcast. Holy crap, that was a strong beer.
Do it.
All
right. Any other announcements?
I don't think we really have any true announcements other than the fact that you got a mic. I'm going to add that to the announcements right now. There.
That gives it away.
In the announcements now. Oh, right. It's a surprise. Sorry.
Yes, and I'm told that the microphone picks up everything.
It does. These things really do pick up a lot. I mean, like, can you hear this? It's really...
I haven't... Maybe one of these days when I'm working, I'll just break this out and have one of my conferences just like this.
There you go. There you go. People be like, what? Huh? What's with that awesome mic you got there? That's pretty cool. All right. So following on, I had a couple ideas for topics for tonight, but given the outbreak of all this ransomware with WannaCry, I thought it might be fun to talk about how to protect your organization against ransomware.
It's hopeless.
Whatever.
Give up.
It's hopeless. Give up. Your stuff will eventually be encrypted, and you will have to pay lots of money. That actually is a really good starting point. I heard one other podcast. It may have been Defensive Security talk about should you pay if you get hit with ransomware? Should you pay the ransom?
So there's a couple takes on it. If you have not taken precautions and you choose not to pay, you lose your data. End of story. So
right.
Sometimes it's not I want to take the high ground and not pay, and I want to be that guy that says, no way, I'm not going to support this. But if your data is at stake here, a lot of people will just roll over and do it.
Yeah, I mean, from an ideology standpoint, I would absolutely say never, ever, ever pay criminals for anything. Because that's exactly what this is. These are people that have illegally stolen your data and encrypted it.
Yes, it's just like never negotiating with terrorists, except when you do because you have to, but you don't ever.
Yeah, right, exactly. We don't negotiate with terrorists except when like children are on the line, right?
or insert another reason here. There's always an excuse. There's always an exception to the rule.
There are absolutely times when you break your own ideology because it's worth it, right? So,
yeah, like I got a Facebook for a couple weeks because I thought it was going to be worth it.
Because you wanted to talk to a friend that was on Facebook.
Yeah. Yep.
Didn't you later get that friend to join Twitter?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think you did.
Possible.
Just belligerent like that, aren't you? So anyway, so I guess, yeah, I mean, everyone's got their limit, right? So I whichever podcast it was that I heard it on, the example they used was you're a healthcare institution and lives are on the line. Do you just pay the ransom or do you not pay? And they came up with, yeah, absolutely pay. If someone's going to die because of it, you pay the ransom and just deal with it. Yep. I think there's other cases where it's not quite so life-threatening, like literally life-threatening, that I would probably say, no, I wouldn't pay the ransom. Even if it is like, oh, all my family pictures that are irreplaceable are encrypted. I just don't know that I would.
It would suck.
It would suck, absolutely, but it wouldn't suck any worse than, oh, I didn't have backups and the hard drive crashed.
Right. Yeah. Right? So, which is a really good point. So, if we think about this, oh no, all of my data is inaccessible. Sounds an awful lot like, oh no, my hard drive crashed and all of my data is inaccessible.
Yeah, right.
So
the difference is people don't break into your computer and crash your hard drive. Right.
But the outcome is essentially the same. So you no longer have access to the data that was on your hard drive yesterday. You're backing up, right?
Yeah, right. That's the key.
And it goes a little further because in a lot of cases now, people have attached storage that they back up to. Apple devices are particularly susceptible to this because most people that use Time Machine, that's just a disk on the network, or it's a USB disk that you plug in every once in a while. And the problem is that with most ransomware now, any attached storage, regardless of where it is, also gets encrypted.
Yeah, as long as it's attached to the machine at the point where the encryption occurs.
Right. So I have multiple locations that I back my system up to. One that's pretty much attached 24/7 so that I can make sure that I have everything backed up pretty much in real time. And I have another USB device that I plug in usually once a day, once every other day when I remember. And that backs up and then I turn it off. Now, I'm susceptible while those devices are connected.
Right.
But generally speaking, as long as at least one of them is not connected to my machine, if I get locked up with ransomware, I can always recover.
Yeah, so I do something similar. For any machines that I have that are running Mac OS, I have an external drive that uses Time Machine, course, to back up. And the other primary operating system I run is Fedora. And within Fedora, there's this nice duplicity front end, which does something similar to Time Machine, though not as fancy as Time Machine. But they both use an external USB drive that I keep on my desk at work. And when I take my laptop to work with me, I just plug that drive in and let it do its backup once a week, I think is what I'm doing with it. And then, it sits there on my desk at work. So it's pretty safe, unless the cleaning staff try to steal my USB drive or something. So
that's a whole different type of security.
Yeah, right.
Security and locking it up, etc. But
that's not crypto.
So Fedora has moved away from Bacula. I haven't messed around with it in a while.
No, they've been duplicity for quite a while.
Have they?
Yeah, they're
pretty sure it was Bacula the last time I looked at it. So it's been a while.
I could be mistaken. There's a nice front end that you never really have to care what's behind it, but I'm almost positive it's duplicity in the background.
Right. Cool.
So, but yeah, it schedules backups, and I just plug in the USB drive. If it doesn't see it, it doesn't run its backup. Obviously, if it does see it, then it'll run it. If it misses its backup, then the next time it sees the drive, it'll force a backup. So it's pretty handy.
So backups are one of the primary prevention mechanisms or recovery mechanisms if you get hit with ransomware.
Yeah, backups don't do anything to prevent ransomware, but they do give you an avenue to restore afterward.
And even when ransomware wasn't around, you should be doing this anyway. Hard drives crash, guys.
Yeah, backups are nothing new.
It happens.
Nothing new at all. Hard drive failures have been happening since. Heck, back when hard drives did not even exist and everything was stored on floppy drives. If you had something important, you had at least 2 copies of it. That's a backup.
Right. Yeah, at this point, if you're not doing backups, anything that we say is not going to help you.
We could have a whole discussion about the inconvenience of getting backup set up, but it is absolutely worth the effort.
Let's see, Mac and Linux, at least Fedora, make it pretty easy these days. I thought, and forgive me, I'm not a Windows person or haven't been a Windows person in a while, but I thought there was something similar in Windows 10 now as well, where you can start setting up backups like this, pretty quick.
Windows has had a decent backup tool built into it for quite some time. It's gotten easier to configure over the years, but yeah, it's been there. I can remember it as far back as Windows 2000 or XP.
Right. So for your average desktop computer, setting up backups and getting them run is usually as easy as plugging in a USB drive and pointing your backup software at it. It's not a massive task. Servers are often a different beast. There's a lot of reasons for that. When you get into server backups, you're usually dealing with a ton of data and you have to worry about scheduling things. And there's a lot of reasons why that gets complicated. But even then,
server backups come back to what sort of recovery time you're trying to hit.
Right.
So if you're just looking to restore the data and reconfiguring the entire server and the amount of time that takes to get done is completely acceptable, then it's really not that complicated. It's really just like backing up your desktop. You just need to make sure all the data is there. If you want to restore faster, which means you're going to have to be able to either get a bare metal backup or you're going to have to, somehow back up the configuration of whatever application you're running, then it gets a little more complicated, especially on Windows.
Yeah. Windows can be really complicated.
I've been there.
Yeah. But in general, look, backups are key for a lot of reasons. And they help a lot with ransomware. So, you get popped, your files get encrypted, wipe the machine, restore from backup, patch, and then move on. You may lose a day's worth of data. So that's really the trade-off. Is a day's worth of data worth sending the ransom to whoever has perpetrated this against you, and possibly not getting your data back? In which case, I don't know many applications that will continue to work once all their files have been encrypted. So look, you're down. So is the time it takes to give that money to the attacker and have them give you the key and decrypt the data? I mean, that time compared to nuke it and restore from backup and maybe lose a little bit of data. I mean, you got to weigh those things. There's always a risk calculation there.
Yeah, so I mean, the key there is whether that data is in a usable state in your backups. I mean, that's obvious, right? So, I mean, that comes down to testing your backups and whatnot. I can say that I have been through enough server failures that that I can say that I can definitely see where some admins may run without backups and depend on their sheer grit to get things back up and running, right? I've been in those situations where backups had either failed or they weren't working as well as I'd expected them to be, and there's a certain amount of satisfaction that comes from saving the day, right? I was able to pull that hard drive out of that failed server and get the data we needed back off of it. That only goes so far, and your employer might be impressed with it once. If that's your complete mode of operation, and that happens every time there's a failure, it's going to get old quick when it takes you 12 hours to restore a server each and every time, whether it's a failed hard drive or ransomware.
Right. And rebuilding a server that's just a utility server that doesn't store any data that you need to restore is that's pretty quick. You can do a lot of that sometimes from memory, sometimes from, say, a wiki page that has the config on it. Restoring that mail server that has 3,000 users worth of mail on it, if you don't have backups, you're done.
Absolutely. I mean, that's that sort of thing where you just absolutely have to have backups. Now, keeping us on point, I don't know of any crypto or any ransomware that attacks mail servers yet. Except maybe if your Exchange server got hit by WannaCry.
Well, no, there's Linux. There is Linux ransomware. It's not very prevalent, but it's there.
Right. Yeah, I know there's Linux ransomware exists, but I don't know of any that specifically have been designed to attack mail servers. That would be pretty damn nasty.
That could be interesting.
No, I mean that's
actually,
not.
I have a new project. Hang on, I gotta.
Dear bad guys, please don't do this.
Stop giving them ideas, Nate.
Exactly. Don't give them ideas. We don't need more ideas.
So I mean, we've beaten backups to death. Other things that you can do.
Bottom line, back up your stuff. Back up your servers. Back up your workstations. Back up your wife. Wait.
So other things that we can do.
Other things that we can do. So, in the case of WannaCry, this was a worm coupled with ransomware, and the worm spread using SMB version 1. So it used, what was it, double pulsar, which was an NSA exploit on SMB version 1, which would get you
NSA. How do we defend against that?
It's the NSA. We can't defend against the NSA. So, right. In the case of WannaCry, simply blocking off SMB from the internet was a great boon for your security. Disabling SMB version 1 made you practically invulnerable. So, SMB version 1 is a thing that Microsoft themselves have been saying, hey, you should turn this off for quite some time now. So not only did they release a security fix, they also, the protocol used to get into your systems is something they've been recommending you turn off for quite a while. So if you were hit by WannaCry, it means that you had an old version of Samba or SMB turned on, and you didn't have the patch applied. So in a case like that, simply following best practices, which are to keep your system up to date and follow the recommendations of the software vendor. Now, granted, I understand that there are cases where SMB version 1 is still in use by some older platforms. That's a risk you're going to have to evaluate and try to block off. Right. Block off from the world. So
So most of these infections started from internet connected hosts.
right.
So this wasn't a somebody walked into your office and plugged in a laptop and, oh no, I'm infected with WannaCry. Most of this was spread over the internet, which means there's an awful lot of people with SMB v1 or SMB in general open to the internet.
Yeah, well, go look at Shodan, and that'll give you a pretty
No,
good
Shodan will
number.
make you cry.
Shodan will make you cry.
Shodan's going to make you want to cry. So there's always exceptions, but there are very, very few reasons to have SMB open to the internet at large.
Yes.
Especially
Absolutely.
with the weaknesses that exist in SMB in a lot of cases. So, I mean, block the ports. It's not hard. I'm pretty sure that, most home routers do that these days. So it's not it's, look, if you're running the equipment, you should know the equipment. You don't need to be an expert in it, but you should at least have some handle on the capabilities and be able to go in there and say, like, oh no, there's a bad thing out there I need to block. Let's go in and change some config and make it stop.
Right. So WannaCry hit SMB, and specifically SMB version 1. It's easy to say Samba should not have been accessible from the internet, right? Okay, cool. Don't let Samba in. This applies to just about any service. If there are any services that your systems are running that do not need to be accessible to the internet, or maybe you think need to be accessible, but only because, say, employees need to be able to access these things remotely, consider a VPN. Just don't let that service that should probably be protected accessible to the web or to the internet at large, if it doesn't need to be accessible to the general public, right? So, set up a VPN.
You should start your firewall with deny all.
Absolutely.
You should only be allowing traffic that is necessary. This is inbound. Outbound's sort of a different story. We can argue about this all day long. Let's skip the outbound stuff to start, and we'll just say inbound. If you're running an office, let's say it's a hospital. Let's start with a hospital. What traffic inbound do you need to a hospital?
Well, obviously the MRI machine has to be on the internet, right?
Sure, but that's outbound. So
no, it has to have inbound connections so that people can see their.
And I don't work at hospitals. I'm sure there are legitimate things that need to be open, and I honestly don't know what they are. Off the top of my head, maybe a web server here or there, possibly the VPN server. Outside of that, I have a hard time believing that there's a lot of stuff that needs to be open. And so, doing that's going to protect you a lot.
Sticking with the hospital example, not only blocking things off from the internet at large, because even if your workstations are accessible to the internet, right, which they probably shouldn't be, there cases where like MRI equipment, like I was just talking about, right? Those things have an operating system. It could be Windows.
Yep.
If it's Windows and it's on the same network as your workstations, then if your workstations have been hit with WannaCry, they could easily get into your MRI machine or whatever other machine it is that you're running that's on the same network. Correct? So that all comes down to network segregation.
Right. And I'll tell you from experience, network segregation can be a big job.
Oh, yes.
It's not as hard as people want to make it out to be.
Network segregation can be a severe pain in the butt. But
it can be a pain.
It can be very worth it.
Absolutely possible. And it is absolutely worth it. Provided that your network segregation is including firewalls between your network segments. Segmenting your network and having no firewalls at all will mitigate some attacks, but nowadays not many.
Anything that doesn't easily route, it'll
Right.
it'll protect you against. But things that know how to use your default gateway to get to the next network, yeah,
Right.
it's just gonna walk right on through.
If it can propagate over the internet,
yes, it'll
you
propagate
need
throughout your
firewalls
network.
between segments.
Right.
And again, it can be a little bit painful. It's a bit of work to do it. There's grumbling from people. It happens, but in the end, I mean, seriously, it one of the biggest things I hear at the different conferences that I've been to, when talking to pen testers, is one of the easiest things. I mean, they love it when they walk into a network that's not segmented, because they can take over a desktop and jump from that desktop right into your servers and pretty much take over everything, soup to nuts, and never have to actually work for it. And they love it.
So, I mean,
think about attackers. That's even better.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but network isolation and network segregation is not a new concept.
No.
This has been around for quite some time.
Nope. It's been around for a long time. Probably longer than SQL injections have been around. And they've been around a long time too. I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, you look at like SMBs and not Samba, the small, medium businesses.
Right.
A lot of these guys, they don't have staff that understand. Yeah. They don't have staff that understand this. And I get that and I understand that. But when you're talking about a larger business, especially when you're talking hospitals and stuff like that, like, it's 21st century. There is no excuse to not having a staff that knows these concepts, especially since attacks like this are rampant. Like, you can't plug a Windows machine into the internet. Like, if you plug a Windows machine directly into the internet, what is it, like 6 seconds? And you're compromised?
Yeah. Try that sometime. Maybe you shouldn't try that sometime.
From an isolated network segment.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, and then we pick on Windows, but it's any machine. I mean, if you put any unpatched machine on the internet, it's gonna get taken over pretty quick.
Back in the early days when I started tinkering with Red Hat Linux, this was before Enterprise Linux even existed. This was Red Hat Linux like 5, I want to say.
Right.
Red Hat, honestly, they fell to the same problems that Microsoft had, which was, we want to make this easy for system administrators. Let's just turn on all the services, and they can turn off the ones they don't need. Well, that means that there were the attack footprint on a Red Hat box at the time was just enormous, and I didn't know any better. I mean, I was like a teenager tinkering around with this thing in my basement, right? And the number of systems I had that were compromised just because they were connected to my cable modem at home. I mean, it really, it was just staggering. Right. The number of systems that I had to rebuild because of that sort of thing. Now, obviously, I was just tinkering. It wasn't a big deal. The data that I lost would have been, some HTML document that I probably copy and pasted from some other site. But the point is, just like a Windows box is today, Linux can be the same way. It all depends on how the things are, on how things are configured and secured and isolated.
And it sounds like an easy concept. Only turn on the things that you want. I listened to an interview, I think on Paul Security Weekly, this past week, with somebody who was one of the first guys in Microsoft's security team.
Yes, I heard this. That was a good episode.
And one of the things that he said was, like, when they started digging into the security and trying to fix things, they stumbled upon this concept of, like, why don't we turn off all this stuff and people can turn on what they want instead of having everything on by default. And doing that, they didn't, making sure that all these items were turned off didn't fix any security flaws that were in those particular services, but it significantly reduced the attack surface across all the installed base, because the only people that had it turned on were people that needed it. So even though it was vulnerable, you couldn't attack everybody. You could only attack those people that were using it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was episode number 513, if anyone's looking for it.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's pretty good.
I only know that because I looked at my phone, and episode 514 is the current episode, and I'm almost positive it was the most recent episode before that.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was in the last week or so. So
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, simple concepts like that. So a lot of this stuff has been around quite a while. Backups have been around since, well, computers. Network segmentation has been around for quite a while, since shortly after networks were set up.
Networks, okay, let's figure out how to segregate.
Right? I mean, some of this stuff is easy. Some of it's a little bit more complicated to set up, but in general, it's not. We're not asking to deploy these massive security tools that are expensive and are you need 12 people to run and monitor and everything else. It's simple concepts. If you can cover the top 10 easiest things, your attack surface becomes small enough that you're not a target that's going to get accidentally infected by almost anything, viruses or Trojans or worms or whatever. So you do the basics and that protects a lot.
So this is the same concept. I remember hearing this a long time ago. You don't. So say you're average pedestrian walking down the street. You don't have to be the most secure person on the block. You just have to be more secure than the other folks around you, right? So if someone wants to, say, attack you on the street, you just have to be just intimidating enough that you look like you'll be a hassle. And then they'll move on to the next target, right? Now, obviously, that's not so great for the next target, but the same thing applies to computing. If you're just difficult enough to break into, for something like an automated worm, there's a good chance you're not going to get hit because the worm is not going to take into account every single possibility.
Right. So a determined attacker who is specifically targeting you is getting in. Period.
That's a whole different case.
That's a whole different podcast. I mean,
absolutely.
If you are being targeted, chances are they're getting in, and then it's a matter of detection.
That's all about the A's and the P's and the T's, right?
Right. so that goes beyond what we're talking about today. Almost zero of the ransomware that's out there is specifically targeted. It's just let loose. And
especially in the basics. In the case of WannaCry, it is absolutely that. In fact, there are people speculating that it wasn't even intended to be released. It was just like it escaped a containment somehow.
yeah. Given
which
the
is pretty darn scary.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Well, it's scary. It's also really hysterical. And and I guess for the guy who was working on it, it's a little embarrassing. But
if that's even the case, if it is the case, yes, that would be embarrassing. So I mean, but consider that threats like WannaCry are a 100% automated worm, right? It looks for one thing, which is SMB version 1, that is vulnerable to one thing, which is double pulsar, and it tries to attack that. If you are either not running SMB version 1 or you've been patched against double pulsar, you're not vulnerable. You don't have to worry about it, right? So in that case, there's no thought involved. It's just like, does that target work? No, it doesn't. Move on to the next one. Does that target work? No, it doesn't. Move on to the next one. Ooh, this one works. Infected. That one's infected. Now try to spread more. Sorry, I'm hitting my mic here. Getting too enthusiastic about my descriptions.
So you're right. Also, don't make the mistake of protecting against a specific attack, because there's always a different attack out there. So you can go to all your machines, you can turn off SMB1 and block it and patch them, and you're all set, and you're like, I'm impervious. Then something comes out that attacks something completely different that you didn't think of, and you're infected anyway.
Yeah, you can completely protect yourself against WannaCry, and then what was the one we just referred to? Eternal Rocks
Eternal Rocks.
comes along and infects your machines. Now, Eternal Rocks is not ransomware, but it could be. If it's able to infect your system, it could easily do all kinds of nasty things.
Right.
We were just saying that Eternal Rocks doesn't appear to do anything after it encrypts. It's probably listening for something, and that thing it's listening for could be ransomware. It could be anything. It could be command and control. It could be that your machine becomes part of a .NET. I mean, there's any number of things that it could do once it's activated, if it's ever activated.
Yeah. Yeah, there are those out there that never end up getting activated. What was the
Configure? You're talking about Configure, aren't you?
Yeah, Configure.
Yeah, I remember that little cartoon you had on your wall.
Configure. So many people infected with Configure, and it just
didn't do anything. Nothing happened.
Activated. Too funny. Yeah. So I mean, if you run through the basics, and you just happen to not need SMB outside of your local network, and you turn it off, you're protected externally, protected from getting hit by Eternal Rocks. If you do need to run SMB externally, well, that should be on your short list of items to make sure that they're fully patched and secured as best you can. Just like your web servers or your FTP server or your SSH server. Like these are all things that are open normally, and that you should be making sure that they're fully patched. You're using the most secure configuration, and monitoring the logs to make sure that nothing out of the ordinary is happening.
I'm really having trouble coming up with a use case in my brain as to why SMB would need to be available to the internet at large. It's just not coming. I mean, SMB is a very localized protocol. It doesn't even work terribly well over the internet. Why would you need to have it accessible from the internet?
Right. And that's just one example. I mean, there's tons of other ones, but
yeah. I mean, just stand up a server that has SSH available on it and put it on the internet with SSH lockdown, and just wait for the log files to fill up with all of the SSH brute force attacks.
Right.
They come in almost instantly. As soon as you connect to the internet, you'll see a port scan, and then you'll see people trying to break into SSH.
Right. Oh no, it's open to the internet. But I need it open. There's nothing I can do. There are things you can do. There's fail2ban or OSIC, both of which will monitor logs, look for repeated offenders, and block those addresses.
Yep, and if you're sophisticated enough, you can have that stuff feed into something like Puppet, which can then block across your entire network.
Right.
So you could do something like have a honeypot system somewhere, and everything that ever touches that honeypot, because it's not a published system, just gets blocked everywhere.
There's I mean, you can get pretty fancy with some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But start with the basics. Honeypots sound really cool. They sound really interesting. But until you have the basics in place, don't waste your time.
Right. Make sure you've got yourself a decent security program. I mean, even if that's just, your sysadmins have gotten together and decided on what your policies are and whatnot. But worry about those things first before you start tinkering with honeypots and whatnot.
Yep. So cover your bases, and then you can get into the real fun stuff.
Yeah. So I guess our discussion about how to protect ourselves against ransomware has really gone a little afield, a little far off. So it's almost moving into building a security program, which I don't know if either of us are ready to tackle in one night.
That sounds like a series of podcasts.
That could be a series, and I'll admit that's a series that I may learn something from.
I think we both would. But
yeah, right. Yeah. Anybody out there know anything about building a security program? You can come on to the podcast and teach us.
All right. So I think we've beaten that one to death.
Yeah, right. So we're easily at an hour and a half at this point, so maybe we can call it a night.
We could. How do we end this thing again?
How do we end this thing? Well, we could just click the stop button, but that wouldn't be any good. All right, folks. So yeah, I think we've beaten poor WannaCry and ransomware to death at this point. Us and several others. So if you have any comments, or even if you have any suggestions on things you want to hear us talk about, send us an email to podcast@ironsysadmin.com. You can look up our website, www.ironsysadmin.com, which, as I've mentioned before, is still just a redirect to my own site, which shows you the podcast episodes. We're on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. We're Iron Sysadmin all over the place. YouTube, you're going to have to search for us because we don't have a nice crafted URL yet. You can also find the podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. Awesome stuff. So you can also leave us feedback, which will help us improve the show. So please leave us feedback. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. It's just going to help make the show better. And I think that about covers all the things. All of them. Every single thing. Right? Any final words?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Xenophage.
All right. Who are we?
And you're at Gangriff.
At Gangriff, indeed. Indeed.
You look thoroughly confused.
Well, I thought that was something else I was going to say, but there's not. All right, I'm just going to play the outro music, and you guys can take it from there. Good night, everybody.
Good night.